Hello, my name is Kairu Yamanaka. I'm a cultural anthropologist in Japan. Okay, let's start my presentation. Okay, this presentation focuses on animation in puppetry. In recent years, puppetry studies have seen the introduction of fascinating discussion rooted in the intellectual trends known as the material turn, exemplified by Jane Bennett's vital materialism. For instance, Dashiell Posner states, Bennett describes the agency of the inanimate material world in terms that are similar to how puppeteers have long articulated their interplay with puppets. On the other hand, Rebecca Schneider criticizes Posner's view. Although Posner refers to Bennett, she defines puppetry as a human infusion of independent life into lifeless but not agentless object in performance. Posner's argument is based on the traditional understanding of animation in puppetry, but it appears to contradict Bennett's assertion because Bennett aims to serialize the vitality intrinsic to materiality as such and conceives of matters as intrinsically lively, but not ensouled. So if we take Bennett's argument at face value, does animation become unnecessary in puppetry? In my fieldwork, puppeteers often ask me, if puppets or objects have their own vitality and are vibrant from the beginning, what is the purpose of puppeteers? So are we no longer needed? Although it may seem naive from a theoretical perspective, it is a very important insight for anthropologists. This question suggests that the significance of puppeteers' existence is closely related to animation. So the question, do puppets need to be animated or not, is, in a sense, also the question, do puppets need puppeteers or not? The purpose of this presentation is to re-examine the significance of puppeteers' existence under post-human-centric trends from an anthropological perspective by redefining the concept of animation in puppetry, not as an act of injecting life into the object, but as an act of embodying the animacy latent within puppets. This presentation will first offer theoretical considerations, followed by examinations of actual case studies. Okay, let's first focus on Terry Silvio. Silvio is an anthropologist known for the ethnographic study Perry's Thunderbolt Fantasy, a modern style of traditional Taiwanese puppetry, potehi. Silvio defines animation as the construction of social others through the projection of qualities perceived as human, life, souls, agency, intentionality, personality, and so on, outside the self and into the sensory environment, through active creation, perception, and interaction. What is crucial in Silvio's argument is that animation is necessary for an object to be recognized as a social other. Silvio states that in an animistic worldview, where people naturally believe stone possesses intention, stones are already social others, so animation is not required. In the context of vital materialism, it can be said, if stones are believed to be vibrant, animation would not be necessary. But in reality, we rarely think stones have intention or life. Therefore, animation is needed to make us perceive an object as alive or vital. Yet, Silvio seems to view the life of puppets as something projected by humans. So Silvio's conceptual model of animation is close to Posner's argument, which Schneider criticizes. On the other hand, Akiko Kato, a Japanese puppetry researcher, discusses animation as follows. In puppetry, puppets have been animated by using human power and have performed numerous plays. When it comes to animation, people often say life is breathed into it. However, for a puppeteer, what matters is how the puppet lives its own life. Performing with a puppet means finding what the puppet wants to do within the drama and helping it live that way. And Kato's argument is based on the following assertion by Henryk Wilkowski. Wilkowski said, puppet theater is a theater art that the speaking and the acting subject makes temporal use of vocal and motor sources of power, which are outside it, which are not its own attribute. Note the point here. First, Kato positions animation as something distinct from infusing objects with life. In Kato's argument, objects are not fully alive, but possess traces of being alive. Kato states that animation is the embodiment of this intrinsic life. Second, Kato suggests that humans are placed in an objective position in the process of animation because the subject of puppetry is a puppet. Kato is not alone in making such argument. Harina Bashkir, keeping in mind the discourses of Anthropocene, makes arguments similar to Kato's. Bashkir states, coming to life is not only the illusory art of giving life to material object, but something much broader, an attempt to extract and show life hidden in seemingly lifeless matter. Let me now explain, based on my fieldwork in Japan, how such animation is not just an abstract discussion, but is actually practiced by puppeteers. I have been researching how Miyako Kurotani, a contemporary Japanese puppeteer, and her disciples approach puppetry through participant observation of their practices. Kurotani called her styles of puppetry genre grey. Some of you may already know, Kurotani is one of the few contemporary Japanese puppeteers who has gained internationally recognition. Kurotani has performed extensively in Europe and also has been invited to the Theatre Education Conference in Poland. This is Miyako Kurotani. Kurotani asserts that things have their own traces of life. For Kurotani, the job of the puppeteer is to bring the puppet back to life. In this context, Kurotani states that the puppeteer is the source of puppet's movement. The puppeteer is thus used by the puppet. So Kurotani describes the puppeteers as a servant-like role. Kurotani's traces of life refers to the marks of its past relations with others remaining in the material. For instance, scratches and stains indicate how an object has been handled. Also, the materials reveal how an object was produced. By deepening this analysis, it becomes clear what human and non-human entities and the object has interacted with from its creation until it came into the practitioner's possessions. Kurotani calls this life history of the object a narrative. Performing according to the puppet's narrative-based personhood and character is what it means to bring the puppet back to life. Bring the puppet back to their own life. What Kurotani values most is realizing this possibility. What if the puppet could move on its own with its own desire? To achieve this, Kurotani believed that instead of manipulating a puppet from the outside, the puppeteer must have an embodied image of the puppet moving spontaneously through the energy moving within it. To grasp this concept, Kurotani emphasizes energy ball training. This is energy ball training. The energy ball is a sphere of life energy that moves inside the bodies of both the puppets and the puppeteer. The trajectory of this ball causes the body to be moved from within. The energy ball can freely move back and forth between the bodies of the puppets and the puppeteers. And yeah, this is the one thing from the energy ball training. And Kurotani says puppeteer have to grasp the sensation that their own bodies is being moved by the energy ball. To make this sensation actual, the puppeteer must first understand the existence and movement of the energy ball within their own body. Kurotani and her disciples often emphasizes the physical empathy of the puppeteer towards the puppet. This empathy lends credibility to the phenomenon that the puppet moves on its own with its own desire. Thus, for Kurotani, animation is not about the puppeteer injecting life into lifeless objects, but about embodying the puppet's own life. As we have seen, animation in puppetry can be understood both theoretically and practically, not as a human externalizing life into an object, but as an embodiment of the life inherent within it. So even if the object possesses its own life or vitality, animation is necessary to make us believe it. At this point, the act of animation can be considered not as the puppeteer animating the puppet, but as the puppet animating itself by using the puppeteer. Furthermore, Kurotani's view of objects overlap with the cultural anthropologist Tim Ingold's assertion that things are their relations. Ingold argues that to restore the animacy of object, it is not necessary to grant agency or inject soul, but rather to perceive that the world is constantly in a state of becoming. Ingold's arguments may provide a valid foundation for thinking about animation in puppetry. However, it should be borne in mind that Ingold is a thorough critic of the theory of agency and directly refuses Latour, on whom Bennett relies. And while I'm interested in the paradoxical fact that in order to arrive at a non-anthropocentric concept of animation, such as that examines in this presentation, it is significant to focus on the asymmetrical relationship between the puppeteer and the puppet, rather than on the symmetry of various beings proposed in recent de-anthropocentric discussions. So both Kato and Kurotani have in mind the classic discussion of the separations and inversion of subject-object relationship. Subject-object relationship in puppetry. Of course, what I have taken up is only a single case. For more rigorous theoretical formulation, cross-case investigation will be indispensable, and there will also be counterexamples. And finally, as other presentation at this conference show, with the advancement of robotics and AI, objects can now move and speak entirely on their own. In this era, what kind of act is animation, and how will the significance of the puppeteer or manipulator be positioned? Animation is open before us as a stimulating and interesting question in the puppetry arts. References. Okay, thank you for listening.